So yes, I'm Catherine Brahic, I'm the environment editor at The Economist, and I'm delighted to invite our panelists up. We are going to be talking about minimizing the impact of coastal cities on ocean health. And with me, I've got, almost in order. No, that's good. I'm kidding, you didn't need to be in order. This is Mirella Vitali, Senior Vice President for Group Marketing, Communications and Public Affairs at Rockwell Group. We have Giulio Magni, Director of the One Ocean Foundation, Thomas de Groot, founder of River Cleanup, and at some point we are hoping to be joined via the magic of the airways by Emmanuel Soronjoli, who is the mayor of Kampala City. He's currently, I think, trying to be beamed over to us, so we'll see if we can get him, and otherwise we'll carry on as we can here. There will be, I'll turn around to the audience for some questions later. There's, I believe, a system for you guys to send them to me directly to an iPad, so if you've got any, please do that, and yeah, we can come around to your contributions. So Mirella, just to start us off, could you talk to us, give us a bit of a sort of lay of the land, in what ways do cities impact ocean health, and where are we at in terms of trying to mitigate that?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, obviously cities, and in particular coastal cities, do have an impact on ocean health, because they are these, business, social, innovative hubs where, very high density of population, very intense, built area, large construction, built up areas, and construction, as most people know, is 30% of all global waste, in some countries even more. So just by nature, population density, the built up area, the consumption, they create a lot of stress on the water systems and on the ocean. But on the other side, I think we shouldn't, make the cities out to be the bad guys. We want that social development to continue. We want those economic hubs to continue to be there, because it's actually more sustainable, bringing people closer together. The concept of the 15-minute city is all about bringing people together and having them work in a more condensed space in order to avoid transport and other fossil fuels being used to move people around. But I think it's the way you build up that city. It's how you construct it, how you design it. So it's the urban planners, it's the regulators, it's the construction industry, and then of course you have all the maritime industry that is, of course, typical of a coastal city, and then not to mention tourism. You don't want to slow tourism down, because that's an economic source for those cities, but it's about doing sustainable sustainable tourism and setting it up in the best way possible.
So build up density, don't eliminate density. That
Exactly.
is the most sustainable option here. It's actually true often for agriculture as well,
Yes.
controversially. That's the big picture. Now, Giulio, your organization has done some research on specifically the impact of businesses on the oceans, and you're looking at whether or not they have an awareness. Tell us a little bit about your findings there.
Yeah, over the last 5 years, we have been working on the relationship between businesses and the ocean. And we went through more than 1,600 sustainability reports of leading companies, trying to investigate how these companies are facing the ocean issues, if they are aware of their impact on the ocean, if they do something for the ocean, and if they disclose something that they are implementing in their businesses. And we have realized that just that 25% of the companies are at the same time aware and active for the ocean. They are aware of their impact. The impact can be direct, but also indirect. Sometimes nobody knows that even if you have your operations far away from the ocean, you can have an impact, also very important impact on the ocean. For instance, CO2 emissions or microplastic, for instance, considering textile industry. They put microplastics in the rivers and lakes, and finally they go to the ocean. So it's important to, we really believe that awareness and activation need to converge. And just around 25%, as I mentioned, of companies we realized by our sample are sustainability leaders.
You mentioned your sample. What kind of companies are you looking at?
Leaders in 17 industries, so global leaders in 17 industries. In the next few weeks, we are going to realize the new update of this research, the 8th of June in Milan. So you are invited to take part in that release. And unfortunately, we understood that the 45% of this sample of these companies, they are not neither aware nor active about ocean issues. So that's a really problem, because we really need to spread the necessity to be to do something for the ocean. So for the corporations, but also talking about the cities, it's important to make them aware of this necessity.
Yeah.
Can I add a point there?
Absolutely.
You know, what Giulio is saying is perfectly right. Also, because if you look at the ESG rating schemes, where businesses, it's what we measure ourselves up to in the reporting, it's very much focused on carbon, you know, decarbonizing your footprints and the impact that you have on air quality. But actually, very, very few questionnaires ask you to evaluate your impact on the ocean. It's not part of the reporting. It will be part of the new EU reporting. And that's why, you know, sometimes you want to go above and beyond what you do as a business. And that's also why we teamed up with the One Ocean Foundation, because they have this Ocean Disclosure Initiative to be more transparent and to say, oh, hold on a second, you know, are we impacting the ocean and we actually don't know about it because it's simply not part of the sustainability reporting that you do. So we actually just signed up to SDG 14 just this year.
Right.
And very few, as Julia says, very few large industries actually, you know, sign up to that SDG, because the focus is always on air quality.
Around 8% of companies of our sample say something about the SDG 14.
Okay.
But it's growing.
Which is life below water, I should add.
Yeah, of course. I think probably most people in the room know, hopefully. That's great. Now, so that sort of big picture stuff, just checking, no, we still don't have the mayor. Thomas, tell us about what your organization, you've got a very specific, focused interest in this. Tell us a little bit more about that.
All right, yeah, so we focus on plastic pollution. And as you know, a lot of the plastic in the ocean is coming from rivers. So that's why we focus on that. And our objective is to create plastic-free rivers globally. And we do it by combining people and technology. Because we truly believe that if you want to have a sustainable solution, you have to involve people, you have to change the behavior of people, because that leads to change in policy and change in companies that take other decisions. So it's a first step, and to do that, I agree with you, it's to make people aware. So we focused a lot in the last years on raising awareness with over 200,000 people in 88 countries. Because that's step one. If you want to solve a problem, you have to see it. And in our case, it is see the plastic pollution by joining a cleanup, for example. And if you see it, you start to change your behavior and you become part of the solution. So we still have a long way to go, because it's 11 billion kilograms of plastic that are entering our oceans. So if you say, okay, who's involved? I think we're all involved. Because 5% of all the plastic produced ends up in our oceans. So, of course, close to cities you have much more people, and the more people you have, the more pollution you have. But for me, it really starts with all of us taking the right choices, and you can only do that when you're aware of the problem. So,
I sometimes feel like the plastics and the microplastics, that this may ruffle some feathers, but it gets more attention than it deserves relative to the myriad of other ways in which humans impact the environment. It's obviously the one way that we relate to the most, because it's an easy way at an individual level to have an impact on your environment. But it's not the only way. I'm curious, you know, if we're talking about the impact of cities writ large, you deal with the built environment, it seems like a small part of the problem.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you consider plastic. I think very few people realize how much plastic is used in large construction. You know, people tend to think that plastic are the bags we find at the supermarket or you know, the straws that we use. But actually, most buildings in Europe are insulated with plastic foam insulation, which cannot be recycled, which is impregnated with flame retardants, because that's what makes it, you know, eligible to be on buildings. And a lot of that actually it does end up in the oceans because it either has to go to landfill or it goes into waste streams because it can't be recycled. So for sure, it's not only plastics we need to be looking at, but I think it's the bigger picture plastics.
Is it just the easy one, though?
I mean, I think it's the easy one, obviously, because it, you know, in most cases it cannot be recycled because you can only recycle certain types of plastics once they have flame retardants or they've been sort of dirtied by the process. But I think that the real issue is looking at waste management streams and designing for circularity. Of course, you know, you need to go to the root of the problem first of all. So for sure, it's not the only issue that people have to face with.
If you can react on that? Yes. I don't think the question is it the easiest or the most difficult? I think it's the one where we can all get involved. And if you ask me, how can I save the ocean, the biodiversity in the ocean? Okay, I can maybe buy other products, but I have to analyze what's in my product, and it's very complex. So I think plastic is, in that way, a good one to focus on because it's super clear what we can do there. And the moment you do it and the moment you take actions that reduce our plastic, this will lead to other actions. So it's a starting point. It doesn't mean that we only need to focus on plastics. It's a super important, harmful element that causes our oceans to die eventually. So it's super good to start. It has a lot of impact, but it's not the end point. So, but I think the power of involving everybody in things that they can have an impact too, I think that's that's essential in solving this problem.
Yeah, I truly believe that the critical point is that the actions have to be relevant. During our researches, we have analyzed how for each industry there's different pressure on the ocean. So a certain company or a city first has to analyze what's the relevant impact that it generates on the ocean, and that's work on it. Otherwise, you do many activities, many, you know, communications also, that's greenwashing. It's not relevant. You don't go to the point. So that's important to find the good tools also that can help public institutions or companies to investigate what's the real impact, how to measure it, how to minimize it, and how to communicate it to the other stakeholders.
Am I correct that you're developing some tools?
Yeah. We have been working on this Ocean Disclosure Initiative tool. It's going to help companies to, as I said, to identify relevant aspects, how to measure and how to disclose their activities, their commitments for the ocean, to minimize their impact on the ocean. Rockwool is helping us also doing this. We are collecting a pool of leading companies that we would like that can promote this tool, because we truly believe that if leading companies do this, help us in doing this, and decide to follow our tool, our rules, we can have a real impact throughout the society and the businesses in general.
So what's involved in this tool? What exactly is it?
It's a framework. We have done these studies thanks to also the scientific community to investigate how each industry can have an impact on 11 pressure points, environmental status indicators, and then we tried to put down a questionnaire with questions for the companies, and a framework system, an algorithm that calculates how this company has an impact on the ocean through a number. We can release a rating And now we are defining, and we are in the test phase of the tool, thanks to companies that decided to try it and to help us to.
And what sort of companies? I mean, you mentioned Rockwool. What other companies are involved?
I don't know if I can say the names. Anyway, the most leading companies in 17 industries, but we are.
Can you give some examples of the industries that are involved?
Finance. We have Intel São Paulo, for instance. Agriculture, textile, and fashion industries. We had 15 big companies that have been supporting us in doing this, because textile is one of the most polluter. And but we are still looking for other companies that are available to help us in this path.
Okay. Just going to check. Do we have? No, there's no. Okay, never mind. So we've talked a lot about the built environment and on plastics. I know you've done quite a lot of work with water as well. And I was wondering, obviously cities have a huge impact on water supply, not just because of what flows down them, but also in terms of water quality.
Yeah, and water consumption.
And water consumption, absolutely.
Yeah, but again, I do agree to a certain extent that it's also people's behaviors that have an impact, you know. And if we were all a little less wasteful, that would help. Obviously, I very much agree with the awareness. That's also why Rockwool partnered with this sailing platform. We're actually a sponsor of a sailing team within this sailing Grand Prix, because this sailing race actually visits coastal cities, because obviously the racing takes place in the water. And it was to use a platform that was a sports platform, because you get a much bigger audience, because we can't always read the scientific papers that are sometimes very hard for people to digest. So we wanted to use a sort of innovative platform to communicate, you know, what impact cities have on water by visiting these coastal cities through this sailing Grand Prix. And actually, every city we visit, we do a short video talking to the local authorities and understanding. We actually call it beneath the surface, because these are really iconic cities. You know, it's San Francisco. It's we also go to islands. We also go to Bermuda. We go to Sydney. We go to New York next year, Halifax. But also to understand what are the challenges they face and how, you know, cities can deal with the issues they have also with water quality. I think in Singapore, we were recently there, and we went out to see sort of a fishery, and they have really big issues in Singapore, because it is such a big economic port, and it's a hub. And again, they say, you know, Singapore has been developed economically because of that hub, but at the same time, it's had massive impact on the quality of the water. We even met somebody who was leading an NGO who, as a child, had been swimming in the waters, and acid had actually impacted her skin, and she, you know, now suffered from a skin issue because of that. So it's working with cities and understanding, you know, how the challenges they face, because as Julia says, you need to first assess the risks and the hazards, and then you need to find the solutions. But I think a lot of what we look at and a lot of what we find in the cities is that there are solutions. And this is where I say it's not enough just to change behaviors, and here is where I think the regulators need to step in, because in most cases there are technologies, there are solutions, we know how to do it, and we can do it in better ways, but sometimes we need a little bit of a nudge. So I think that behavior is better changed when regulation and frameworks are firmly in place. Because I'm a little bit more cynical, and I don't think many of us do things just from the bottom of our heart. So I would love to be in a world that happens, but I tend to think that you need a regulatory push to help it along.
So we can come back to that. I see that we have the mayor with us. Can you hear us? Emanuele sorry, I'm not pronouncing that right. Siranjoli, can you hear me? We can't hear you. Do we have a tech person who can help us get audio? I'm very, very sorry, Emanuele. We can't hear you right now. I'm going to come back to you. I don't think it's a problem at your end. I suspect it's that there's an audio issue over here. So we'll come right back to you.
Yes,
Oh.
I had muted, I can get you.
And now we have you. Hello. Welcome to this panel, and thank you for joining us. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry we've been having these technical issues. So we got started without you, but perhaps you just heard there Mirella talking about the importance of regulators in terms of changing behavior and helping the city as a whole have a lower impact on the oceans and the bodies of water around it. Kampala has been working quite strongly in this direction. I was wondering if you could give us a bit of a sense of what you're doing over there to reduce the impact, in this case, not on the oceans, but on Lake Victoria.
I'm very grateful and happy to join the panel. I'm Dr. Emmanuel Selonjoji, the Mayor of Kawempe, Kampala Capital City Authority, Kawempe Division. At the same time, I'm the chairman of all the mayors of Kampala City, and I'm also the chairman of LAVLAC. LAVLAC is a corporation of 22 local authorities or local governments, and those are the local governments which are found on the shores of Lake Victoria. I'm happy to join the panel and happy to be in the conference. Yeah, it's true. One of our goal now is to make sure that people are sensitized. It's true, one of our responsibilities and tasks is to preserve the lake, that is Lake Victoria, but we want to preserve it and to keep it away from people who are polluting it in any way and who are not utilizing the resources of the Lake Victoria in a better way. So we realize that the laws are in place and are not needed to the best of all the authors and the leaders. So we decided to embark on the sensitization campaign of making sure that the people are sensitized. Once they are sensitized, then we work on the changing their mindset. Because the problem, these people are not doing what they are doing because they want to do it, but just because they don't know. We are looking forward to the better way of changing their mindsets. You know that when I pollute the lake, the repercussions or the consequences comes back to us or to me, whoever is littering or polluting the lake. So our main emphasis now is on changing the people's mind. And it has worked because time and again we analyze to see how far have we gone as far as fighting for the lake and fighting pollution is concerned. And it's yielding results even before we move deeper in the ground and the local authorities. So that's what we are trying. And once that is done, an impact will be realized and we are sure the lake will be preserved. But we are looking forward to see and to get ideas from you. How do you change your people's mindsets to make sure that the lakes or the oceans are preserved?
Thomas, do you have something to say to that? How do you change people's minds? That's what you've been busy doing.
Yeah, we like to do it in a positive way to get people enthusiastic about it and to show them the problem and to tell them about the impact of our behavior on oceans. I truly think that it's a combination of people, companies, and governments together, because often you see people consumer point at the company, companies point at the consumer, and we all say the government needs to take action. That's a common thing. I think it's a combination between the three parties.
How do you do this in practice? Because I feel like everybody's always talking about, yes, you need to get people involved and you need to inform, but there comes a point where just talking about information and awareness is almost like, pushing back the moment where you actually take action and you put your foot to the floor and actually do the doing.
Specific example for in Cameroon or in Ghana. So actually, it's not that difficult. What we observe there that the system is not working. That means people put their trash somewhere. The municipalities do not empty it enough, fast enough, or not at all. It stays there, so it starts smelling. People start throwing it in the river. It's as simple as that. We see it in Albania, in Cameroon, Ghana, Indonesia. That's often sort of the problem. So what you need to do, you have to give people a solution. So we tend to go to schools, inform kids about the impact of plastic on the ocean, and we give them an eco bin. It's a simple metal cage where they can put their plastic inside. The kids learn how that works. We put another one in the village. So that means kids go home, they talk with their parents about what they learned, what the issue is, and they tell their parents to use the bin. So in that way, you collect the plastics, and then you can get a whole system around it where good quality plastics are collected. So there's a profitable model behind it. You can reuse it. It's not ending up in the landfill that often is used by the local municipality. So the system works, and all the parties benefit. The kids are happy because they do something for their own environment, and the community gets some funds back with the plastic that is sold. And the municipality is happy because they don't have to do it. So in a way, it's not that difficult. You just have to do it, and you just have to start doing it and make it fun and make people see the solution.
So you just have to start doing it.
Yeah,
it almost seems too easy.
Yeah.
Is it too easy? Is it that easy?
Yeah, it's not that easy in our country because people were not used to that. But we are getting on slowly by slowly. We'll get to where they are because those are some of the strategies we are thinking about of how best can you incentives to put incentives in place. I like the presenters. The panelists' submission that at least there are some incentives. That works. We are trying to come up with projects of how best we can utilize that strategy. We go by that strategy. But just separating waste in our country is not something easy because even the urban areas, people are not used to separating the waste. Once they collect the garbage, they just put it in one plastic. Even if you we have tried to put up some bins, different plastic bins, encouraging them to sort the garbage. But people are not ready to be inconvenienced to that extent unless we intensify the training, the sensitization. I'm sure we will get to that point. It's not that easy, but we have started. And that I like that word, start. We have started, and once we start, I'm sure we will succeed.
So I don't want to spend the entire session talking about putting plastic in bins, but you did have one quick response.
I think what you need to do is to win people's hearts. And in all the countries that have been linked to plastic pollution, you see that everybody's proud on their country. So if you start telling the story and touching that with the kids, with the local communities, nobody likes to live in a polluted area. So there is a common ground why people want to change. So you just have to jump. It's not easy. I didn't say it's easy at all. But you have to go over the heart of people, and then in the end, we all want a better planet, and we all want our ocean to be clean. So it's not that people deliberately don't want it. So that's the good thing about it.
Very briefly, then I want to talk about your filter.
No, but just to go to the point, as you were saying, is plastics easier? Let's not forget that there are also processes that we use in everyday life, but also in industries, and those processes where the water is contaminated then needs to be you need to create these closed loop systems so that if water has been used in an industry, water is used to cool nuclear reactors, so you don't want that water going back into the ocean, so you have to have these closed loop systems. And I think also, again, that goes back to how you design processes. You still need process data centers. Julia was saying finance. Why does a finance company sign up to an ocean disclosure initiative? Tons of water are used to cool down data centers. And again, is that water clean or pure afterwards? No, it's contaminated. So how do you create those closed loop systems so that once waters are used in processes, those waters are not then seeping back into the ocean? So just to say that, listen, we are focusing on plastics in this conversation, but there's a lot more than plastics that we need to be looking at.
Yeah,
If I can
Yes,
add something,
Julia.
I think that it's crucial to listen to people, listen to important stakeholders in the community, understanding why they are not following the best practices, what are the main issues for the communities, and trying to implement the right technologies, the right methods to improve the sustainability of a city.
So engagement.
Yeah.
Now, before we go to questions, which we should do really quite soon, I do want to give you an opportunity to tell the audience about your filter, because there is, in fact, a way, it's not just about closed-loop systems. Sometimes it's actually about cleaning that water.
Yeah, well, basically, today, water collection in most cities, when there's an overflow of rainwater, it's actually collected. You know, you see those drains, it goes down into these, unfortunately, again, plastic tanks, but the water stays there and it stagnates. It becomes a sort of growing ground for all kinds of bacteria that grow there, because it's just basically stagnated water. And until those waters either dry out or they have systems to, you know, get rid of the overflow or excessive rainfall, then that stays in our drains below the cities. That's why very often in cities you get those bad odors coming up through the drains. And what we have found a way of engineering our stonewall products, which normally repel water when you insulate a building.
So stonewall product, very quickly.
Stonewall is basically, it's like an insulation slab. You use it to keep your house warm in the winter, or it keeps actually the sun also out. So it creates an insulated building. You can re-engineer the fibers so it actually absorbs water. And it absorbs all the water just like a sponge, but then it releases it slowly. And at the same time, the fibers of the insulation itself, of this stonewall product, creates a filter so that the water that actually comes out and is released is actually filtered. So it works like a sponge and a filter at the same time. And then that water can be reutilized by the cities to, for parks and for flower beds, etc. So we have, several projects in Holland and also in Denmark. We're actually piloting a project in Milan right now. So it can, help the city deal with excessive rainflow, and so that you don't get that excessive water flowing into the city and into the streets, but at the same time it filters the water.
So circular water without a chemical,
exactly,
an additional chemical filter.
Yes.
We've got some questions already. So there's a gentleman down here, and then we'll come over to this side. If you could keep your questions relatively brief, that'll give more time for the answers, because we don't have a huge amount of time left.
Hello, my name is Luke Douglas-Hume. I'd like a very brief row, please, Thomas, please. Bearing in mind that since the beginnings of the plastic industry, plastic consumption has gone up by 20,000% since 1950. 20,000%, and it's going to treble in the next 30 years. Are you really suggesting, or logic, that this is problem on this colossal scale is going to be solved by recycling and awareness? Are you really saying that?
No, that's not what I'm saying. We focus on three things. It's cleaning up. This is not a solution. It's educating people not only about the impact of plastic, but also about alternatives. And the third one is transform, and that's the most important one. It's transform companies to reduce their single-use plastic addiction and to not use the plastics in the first place. So where we started from cleanup events and raising awareness, this is important, but now our focus goes much more to preventive collection and to transformation, to change the behavior and to change the use of plastic, because this is step one. Reduction and substitution is step one. Collection and recycling, it's a second step. And you see in countries in the South, in Africa and Asia, there you have to start first collection and recycling, because it's just all over. But in Lisbon, in Portugal, or in Belgium, or in Netherlands, the focus should be on reduction and substitution. That's also what Breaking the Plastic Wave, one of the key studies where we base our approach on, is saying. So I fully agree with what you say.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a moral hazard to creating a recycling loop. We had some other questions. The gentleman at the back here, or in the middle. Yeah.
Thank you. Frank Jesus from the European Investment Bank. I have a question for the mayor of Kampala. Reducing pollution from wastewater stormwater or waste going to the sea or a lake, in your case, requires investment in wastewater infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, waste management systems. And I wanted to have your views on how is a city like Kampala in a position to invest in such infrastructure? Do you have the capacity to do it? What is missing if you don't have the capacity? How does it work in the practice in your case?
Did you hear that, Mr. Sanjoli? Oh, you're on mute again.
Yes, I got the question.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, with Kampala as a developing city, when we talk about capacity, I can't say that we have a better capacity to handle that, but we are trying with stormwater in our country. Stormwater, of course, most of the stormwater is discharged in the lake. And that's why our emphasis first is to make sure that the surfaces are clean, so that when water goes out to the channel, which discharges it to the lake, is clean. That's the reason. And we have thought about projects, a number of projects, like harvesting the stormwater, first of all, whether we can be in position to harvest stormwater. Local authorities, Lake Victoria Region local authorities and the national water, that is the body responsible for water management in the city. We are trying to come up with projects and programs of harvesting that water to make sure that it's reusable before it goes to the lake. But still, that is still all those in the offing. And in our country, we are relying so much on the wetlands because we had quite a number of them. And we used to filter that water through those wetlands, which are being encroached on. As a developing country, even the capacity to maintain and to look after those wetlands is not that good. The capacity to look after those is not that good. So we also fail in maintenance and safeguarding the wetlands, which are supposed to filter water before water is discharged in the lake. So we are trying. The capacity needs a lot to handle, like getting the will of the central government. And when it comes to the central government here also, it takes time.
So it's a fair point that there's obviously nature-based solutions around some of these problems as well, taking care of the environment around the urban environment in order to help the urban environment. Was your question specifically about financial capacity, though? Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead. So the question was whether Kampala had the financial capacity to install these systems.
Yeah, Kampala has enough financial capacity. That's what I started with. We don't have capacity. And we are relying now, the strategy we have is to come up with proposals and to look for the goodwill of the central government, which is the main financial. And the will of the central government is not that good, and they have not catered about that. The fact is, financial capacity, we don't have. And we have programs. We have programs. Kampala Master Drainage Program is already in place. We have already written that. And the environmental programs are all many we have, but the problem is the financing.
Perhaps you can connect over financial capacity. I think, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So I just want to thank my speakers, including the Mayor. Thank you very much for connecting remotely. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Giulio. Thank you, Mirella, for joining us today. I am now going to hand back to Stuart. Thank you. Yes.